In Spanish, there are the same 5 vowels that we have in English. A, E, I, O, U, or in Spanish, A, E, I, O, U. And the nice thing about Spanish is they're really, really consistent. In English, we've got combinations of vowels. You put an O and a U together, or an A and an E together. Sometimes it's E-I or I-E, and it can create loads of different sounds. There's so many vowel sounds in English, which is a nightmare for people learning English. In Spanish, it's really, really consistent. A, E, I, O, U. If I put an L before it, la, le, li, lo, lu. If I put a P before it, pa, pe, pi, po, pu. If I put an M before it, ma, me, mi, mo, mu. However, there are 2 combinations of a consonant with these vowels where things get a little bit more complicated. First, let's talk about the letter G. Now, just like la, le, li, lo, lu, this should be ga, ge, gi, go, gu, but it's not. The letter G actually changes depending on the vowel that it's followed by. Ga, ge, chi, go, gu. Sometimes it's a very phlegmy ch. It's very much like the letter J in Spanish. If you're learning an accent where you'd say rojo, rojo, then you would say ge, like the word gente, meaning people, gente. If you're learning a kind of softer accent where you'd say rojo, rojo, more like the H in English, you would say gente. The same with the word for gypsy. Gitano or gitana or gitano, gitana. A G followed by an I or a G followed by an E is what we call a soft G. If it's followed by a, o, or u, then it's a hard G, that g sound, like in the word gato. Gol, when someone scores a goal. Or guante, guante meaning a glove. Now, this is where things get a little bit more complicated because actually I said that A, E, I, O, U, they always sound the way they sound, and you might have learned that the letter H is silent in Spanish, but there is another silent letter in Spanish, and it's the letter U. However, only in a very specific context. What happens if I want to say gente? What happens if I want to say ga, ge, gi, go, gu? Is that an impossibility because the E makes the G sound different? No, I can actually do this if I want to. What I need to do to protect the G sound, that G sound, that hard G, I use a letter U, then the I, or a U, then the E. For example, the word guerra. Notice that I'm not saying guerra. The U is actually silent here. All it's doing is protecting the hard G from the E because the G followed by an E becomes a soft G. The same with the word guitarra, a guitar. I'm not saying guitarra, guitarra. This isn't really making a sound. All it's doing is giving me the hard G sound followed by the I. E and G, gi. So in terms of combinations of sort of phonemes, we've got ga, ge, chi, go, gu, and we've also got ge and gi. Now, just to complicate things a little bit more, what if I actually want to say gue or gui? What happens then? Well, you can do that. What you need to do that is the letter U with the 2 dots, what in German's called the umlaut. I can't think what it's called in Spanish. It does have a name though. Vergüenza. This is giving me the U sound and the hard G, and I'm having that E vowel sound. Vergüenza. So we've got gato, gente, gitano, gol, guante, guerra, guitarra, and vergüenza, which means shame. Que vergüenza, how embarrassing. Now there's another letter which is a little bit complicated you got to watch out for, and that's when I'm using A, E, I, O, U with the letter C. Instead of being ka, ke, ki, ko, ku, what I've got is ka, se, si, ko, ku. Or for most speakers on mainland Spain, ka, fe, fi, ko, ku. I've got a soft C, whether that's a s or a th, like a th sound, when it's followed by an E and an I. And you might know this because if I write a word on the board, how do you say that word? You're probably thinking either cinco or cinco. Either way, your brain is recognizing that this C and this C are pronounced differently. Cinco or cinco. And now you know why. It's because the I and the E change the C to a soft C. So we've got words like carro, a car in most of Latin America, cerdo or cerdo, a pig, cinco, the number 5, coche, a car in Spain, cuatro, the number 4. So just like we did with the G, what happens if I want to have the hard C followed by A or E? How do I get that sound? Ka, ke, ki, ko, ku. How would I do that? Well, Spanish has the solution, and it's the Q-U. So if I write this word, que, what I've got is the same sound that I'm getting from ka, ko, and ku. The Q-U can give me that sound. Like in the number 15, which is quince or quince. I couldn't write this with a C because that would be cince or cince. So the QU basically gives you the same sound as the C, and you use that when you need the k sound followed by A or E. For all the others, you're never going to see like Q, U, A, because Spanish doesn't need that. That would make the same sound as CA. So the QU and the C, they're kind of buddies, they're kind of doing the same sound most of the time. A bit like the J and the G, often making the same sound. The J in rojo sounds the same as the G in gente. Now this should also help you to understand some of the irregularities you might have seen in verb conjugations. For example, the verb to play, jugar. It's got this hard G, jugar. If I want to say I played, past tense, normally I'd take off the AR and I'd add an E accent. But then I've got a problem. Jugar has a hard G. This is jugué. It doesn't sound anything like jugar, which is why it gets this U. Remember, it doesn't make a sound. It's not jugué. It's just jugué. It's just protecting the G from the E, keeping that hard G sound. The exact same thing happens with the verb sacar. Sacar, to remove, to take out. Sacar fotos, to take photos in Spain. If I take off the AR and I add my E accent for the preterite tense, I took lots of photos. Saqué muchas fotos. There's a problem. Sacar has the k, hard C. Sase or sace doesn't sound like sacar, which is why we have this irregularity. Lots of the irregularities you see where there's a spelling change, they're actually regular sounding. They're just irregular looking. Sacar, saque, makes sense. Looks weird on paper, but it sounds better than sacar going to sase or sace, or jugar going to jugué. So sometimes in Spanish, when things are a bit weird, a bit irregular, it actually makes perfect sense when you know why.